At Gabb, part of our core is that social media is hurting our kids.
Yeah.
It is crushing our kids. More kids are depressed. More kids are anxious. More kids are bullied. And social media is a big part of that. For us, it's part of our brand promise. It's core to who we are. We will take a stand against what social media is doing to kids. And it might alienate some people, but they're not our target audience.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. With me, as always, is my co-host, Marcus Goldhart. It's not really Marcus.
No.
It is just Mark, yeah?
Just Mark.
I feel like I've asked you that. I feel like we've known each other for 8 years, and I should just have that answer down.
I think Marcus would be more of like Roman heritage, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Marcus Aurelius.
Well, how are you?
Good.
Yeah?
Great. Well, however you want to say it.
Well, I'm excited about today.
Yeah,
we haven't had a guest for a while. We've got a guest on today. It's been a minute, actually, since we've had a guest.
It has, and I'm excited for this one because it's going to be a little... It's D2C. Yeah. It's going to be very relatable, but there's also just kind of a unique twist to it.
So let's introduce our guests. I want to introduce Russ Hannig. He's the VP of Growth Marketing over at Gabb Wireless. Russ, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me here, you guys.
It's so good to have you. Well, Russ, so we had Nate Randall on the podcast, who is the CEO, current CEO of Gabb Wireless, for those who are listening. And it was one of my favorite podcast episodes. It really was. And part of it was selfish more for me. So when I say it was one of my favorite podcast episodes, it was one of my favorite podcast episodes from like what I learned about needing to be a better parent for my kids. So, and it was kind of, that episode actually got a crazy amount of downloads and listens for what it was, because we did not dive a crazy amount into marketing. Like we picked pieces of it out, but like it was a masterclass in the dangers of parenting, or of what kids are going through. So for those of you who don't know, and correct me if my one sentence is wrong about Gabb Wireless.
You'll nail it.
But if I remember right, Gabb Wireless is child safe tech.
That's right.
Essentially, right?
Yeah.
They create phones, watches for you to be able to communicate, for kids to be able to communicate without all the potentially scary things that a iPhone or other device can bring into a kid's life.
That's right.
For those of you who don't know, like probably my favorite, one of like my top 5 favorite companies in the entire world right now. Like I am such a massive fan. I have 3 kids. All 3 of my kids have the watch. And we are like so wildly dedicated to make sure our kids can communicate, not be left out, but also be protected from the scary things that 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 18-year-olds can find on devices in their pocket. So
100%.
Sorry, that was a long spiel, but welcome. I'm stoked to have you, because Nate, this is how Russ came on. Is I hadn't really known who you were. I mean, I obviously knew that I had seen your name. I knew that you had worked for Gabb, and you happened to like comment on one of my LinkedIn posts, and I just thought, hey, you should come on our podcast. And you're like, sure, I'll do it. I'm like, I was kind of, I'll do those things just to like, I have nothing to lose, And you responded very, very positive. So now we're here.
Honestly, Trevor and Mark, super happy to be here, and hopefully I add some value that people who are listening will go, oh, that's helpful. I'm definitely not the smartest guy, that's for sure. But you'll make up for all of the non-smartness.
No.
When I met, so I actually met Nate Randall. We met actually on a trip. It was a sponsored trip that I went with my friend to watch the Jazz play in Mexico City.
Oh, cool. And
we met there, and then
was he working for the Jazz at the time?
Yeah, or Vivint.
Okay.
Sorry, Nate, I don't remember. But then when they had a position open, he met me on the phone. We talked for an hour, and I got done, and I wasn't looking to leave Ancestry. And I called my wife, and I was like, honey, I think we have to take this one seriously. And I said, I think I'll be a better dad if I work at Gabb. And I've definitely taken the path less traveled in my career. I've really much more successful friends that you guys should have on this podcast. But there's something about what we're doing at Gabb that I have been a better dad.
Yeah.
And it matters a ton. So yeah, super proud of what we're doing at Gabb.
Yeah. So cool. Well, God, why don't you give us a quick spiel?
Yeah.
Tell us a little about your time at Ancestry, what Ancestry is, and
Yeah.
let's just take a quick minute so the listeners can understand who you are, why they should actually be tuning in, because this podcast we're gonna get meaty in this episode, just to let everybody know there will be actionable insights you will be able to gain. It's not just gonna be storytelling. It's gonna be some really good stuff. So give us a little bit of spiel so people can understand.
Yeah. So I fell into marketing, and I'm grateful I did. Got my first job at Ancestry, 2005. Was sophomore in college.
Nice.
Michael shared. Shout out to Michael in Dallas.
And what were you studying in college?
Marketing. I hadn't even taken a marketing class, and Michael, who was at the VP at Ancestry, took a chance on a young kid. So I did several things at Ancestry. I actually worked at Ancestry twice, and I'll talk about that really quickly. But I worked at two different Ancestries. So Ancestry, when I was first there, they were so much smaller, a couple $100 million maybe in revenue. And
Very
now,
small.
and then I left. I went to work for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a lot of cool experience there. And then came back to Ancestry, and when I came back, $1 billion company, had DNA, was just right at the very beginning when I came back.
Yeah.
So
Tell the listeners
Now, was
what
Ancestry
is,
founded
really.
in Utah?
it was
Because their headquarters were in San Fran, right?
no,
Or did they just have an office there?
Yeah, just an office there. Founded here. Paul Allen came up with the idea, and said we could be better at putting some of this stuff online.
Yeah.
So Ancestry was started in 1983 as a publishing business, but then turned into more of an online genealogy, family history in late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And
I did not realize it was that old.
yeah,
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But so early part of my career, I got to do a lot of different things. Figure out, do I like this? Do I like this? Do I like that? But I got to see how Ancestry grew from, a smaller, more local niche company to punching way above their weight. Mm-hmm. People think Ancestry is way bigger than it is, especially outside of, we're in Utah. Outside of Utah, Ancestry, their unaided awareness is 80s. And it is amazing
Wild.
how strong they are. So to see that, and I got to see up close, especially younger in my career, being like, oh, yeah, okay, I see how TV played a role here.
Yeah.
Oh, I see how TV commercials played a role here.
Yeah.
Oh, I see how digital over here played a role.
So what years were you there? The first
2005
round.
to 2005 to 2012.
Okay, so you experienced the emergence of Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, right around that.
100%.
Like Google Ads was a thing, right? But
yes,
the emergence of actual social advertising.
100%. And as I got to see that, and then come back in 2017 when DNA was just at the beginning.
Yeah.
I remember, my first holiday. I don't remember all the numbers. My Ancestry friends are gonna comment and be like, "You have those numbers off," but maybe 2 million kits in a 2-month period.
Jeez.
Just
So it's basically you guys in 23andMe.
yeah, and had a lot of major, credible lessons, having, watching those two brands go at each other and how one came out on top and the other is struggling quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And how they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 23andMe is struggling.
Well, they were in the news recently.
They got caught up with some
naughty no-nos?
some naughty no-nos.
I don't know all the details.
Some
In fact,
privacy breaches?
I'm pretty removed.
Potentially.
I'm pretty removed.
Are they cloning people?
Maybe. I might be one of them. I used it, and I'm so nervous now.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Ken's and I did.
Where's the real Trevor? Bring him back.
Who knows?
Could be a clone.
Who knows?
They just swapped him out last week.
Okay, so you Ancestry, and then what year did you move over to Gabb?
It was 2 years ago, so 2022.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then been doing that ever since. And you know, being at Gabb, we've grown 60% in ARR in 2 years.
Good job.
And that the team is, I'm a big fan, and I have had amazing mentors help me understand this, but it's about knowing your weaknesses and hiring to those weaknesses. And I know where I'm not very good.
Yeah.
And my team at Gabb is incredibly talented.
Yeah.
So that's why it has very little to do with me.
That's me too. I know where I'm not good. It's just like everything. So it's really easy.
And me too, man.
Yeah.
We should be friends.
Just fill in the spot. The gaps. Just
we all just are so self-deprecating right now. No, it's you.
But hold on, I want to back up for a second, because there's two interesting things here. I think the vertical that you've operated in is interesting, because you have an Ancestry and then you have Gabb, which are both about connecting families, but in different ways, right? So Ancestry, connecting families with maybe more of a storied tradition, also the DNA markers, so that people would understand maybe what they're at risk for, et cetera, their genomes. And then you have Gabb, which is kind of more that immediate intra-family connection.
That's right.
So that's pretty interesting that you've been in this family business twice. Now, the next thing I want to dive into before we get into Gabb specifically is 2007 to 2012 was a pretty big paradigm shifting moment for advertisers and marketers because of the emergence of social media. But you were not there when Instagram became a thing and became a boom. So when you went back in 2017, that's kind of peak Instagram boom period. And that's when the algorithms and attribution, people are getting obsessed with that. So I just want to ask you a question. In 2007 to 2012, you were playing with a lot of traditional advertising.
Very much.
With very weak attribution.
Yes.
Unless you're using like a marketing mix model, right?
Mm-hmm.
And using more of like a...
Back then, Ancestry wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not doing that. So you're not using any advanced techniques. You were just using it, trying to see where the correlations were, right?
That's right.
So how did that help you in today's world where people got so obsessed with attribution and understanding where every single dollar is spent? How has that helped you provide growth to a company?
Or trying to understand where every single dollar
Or trying to understand. Yeah. Like, how do you go about attribution? And where do you say it does not matter at this point? Like, yes, it matters, but there's a line that you cross that's just sunk cost that you never recover. So how have you found that line?
Such a good question, Mark. So I think that first of all, I want to say attribution is really important. I think that there's never been a better time to be a marketer, ever. We can understand, and at Gabb, when I first came to Gabb, we were relying on third-party platform data to make decisions.
Yep.
And I worked with somebody at Ancestry. Actually, it was a smaller agency, Bonsai. Started that, friend of mine, and he was at Google forever. And he started this agency. There's a better way to measure. There's a better way to measure. So I immediately brought him on as an agency to help us out, and they have transformed us at Gabb. Like we have better data than I've ever had in the history of me being a marketer. We do a.
Can you explain exactly what they do with their model, or is it proprietary? I don't know.
No. One thing I love about Bonsai is, geez, I'm doing an ad, Matt. I'm here, man.
There you go.
But they were first party cookie all the way. We don't even rely on third party.
Yep.
And we first started with it. We didn't even have a data warehouse, so it's getting all of our data in one spot. And they helped us do that. And then we took that data and we started just to look at a multi-touch attribution look at what we were doing. As we started to grow over the year plus, we started to get more and more into brand where that you're not going to see the attribution necessarily.
Right.
So now we do a 6-month look back every other month in MMM. So And in the past, I would do an MMM, and I'm going to get to your question, Mark. But I would do an MMM, and it would take 3 or 4 months just to even get all the data in there and yada yada, and then you were looking 6 months back, and it wasn't worth it. It was like thanks. It's now May, and you're telling me what I did December to July last year. Cool. Thanks. Now we're getting like live, like how we're doing, what's incremental, what's not incremental. But what Ancestry in the early days taught me, where we didn't have a lot of that measurement, is there's a lot of ways that we market that you have to use your creativity, and you have to realize that it's not all going to be 100% measurable.
Yeah.
So you have to know your audience enough to say, where are they? Where are they really listening? We started testing out podcasts, and the numbers aren't blowing me out of the water, but it's such a unique way to talk about Gabb. You know, we work with these hosts, give them our product, let them use it for a little bit. And then, you know, we ask for a 30 to 60 second spot. Well, they're talking for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool because I can do this with my kid in it. And I say, and I've talked to my team over and over, like, you can't buy that, and you're not going to be able to measure it. And it's not going to be like tomorrow we're going to get a sale from that. It's going to be that mom listening to this other mom going, I'm going to keep that in mind. Like I didn't even know that existed, which is our biggest problem at Gabb, is people don't know that there is safe tech.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer, Mark. I don't know if that got to where you were saying. Attribution is really important.
It's finding the line.
Yep.
Where, because I think what we're getting at is Ancestry and Gabb, I think, have bigger marketing budgets. There's a lot of money raised in these kind of tech companies, but a lot of our listeners are more the e-com side of things.
Yep.
And in e-com, there's been such a push for attribution and all these things. But what we have found is a lot of times those attribution models, I don't want to say a lie, but they give you a vanity metric that doesn't actually give you the incremental growth over time.
Yes.
Because you're not filling the top bucket.
Yes. Sales overnight, brand over time.
Yep. Yeah.
My mentor.
So how do you build the brand over time and measure that build, which takes time to do, but it is possible. And MMMs these days, I mean, we're not going to get too technical today, but you can hijack MMMs with AI modeling now, so you don't actually have to wait. It's
so
not the time
today,
lag.
right?
Yeah, it's not the time lag that people think it.
Do you want to explain what an MMM is? MMM is
It's just like an M&M, but with another M on it.
Give the 20-second explanation, because we're using that term.
So it's called a mix marketing model or marketing mix model. I don't know. People say both.
Yep.
And essentially all it is, TLDR, is you are running a correlation analysis of the impact of each channel on your business and on each other. So you're able to determine, hey, is my TV advertising giving me an incremental lift past whatever mean or however you're measuring it in my direct traffic?
Yep.
And is that providing sales? Or is it also providing a lift in my social media organic reach? So that way you can say, hey, for every $1 spent on Meta, for example, I know that it has a lift of 1.5 on average in my direct traffic, but it also lifts my organic search by 1.2. So then you come up with this dollar figure of like your return on that dollar spent for awareness versus like return on actual sales over time. But there's things in MMMs called weights. So when you're doing statistical analysis, you have to weight things because there's just certain factors that a model doesn't know unless you tell it. So for an example of what a weight would be is Ancestry.com, if they're running this MMM or if Gabb's running an MMM, they have to understand what your like buy consideration window is. Because that helps you understand what the look back window is. There's no point in looking back 12 months if people's buy window is 9 weeks. But most people, right, and the problem with attribution, and that's why people are moving into this MMM world, is your cookie window that you can pass back to Facebook or in these digital advertising channels is only 28 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you do have first party cookies that say they'll keep it for 90, but the pass back window is only 28.
That's right.
So you can only optimize for 28 days.
Yeah.
At a maximum. In Facebook, technically, you can only maximize for 7.
Yeah.
Right. The 7-day click, 1-day view.
That's right.
Or 7-day click.
That's
So yeah.
That
So
was more technical than I expected you to.
yeah, it was a little way.
I appreciate it.
I should have cut it off in
No, that's
10.
good.
But
That's great.
that's basically TLDR.
Yeah.
But
And there's different techniques. There's Bayesian techniques and there's whatever.
But I think what I'd like to underline what you said though is it's easier now than it's ever been. And even if you're a smaller company, a much smaller company, there's ways for you and there are partners that you can go and search out that isn't going to break your bank.
Yeah.
You know, depending on where you're at. But it's that idea of
And honestly, if you're small enough, you probably just need to go, hey, we did this initiative on the 10th. Did
Yeah.
we see any lift from
Yes.
it within 14 days?
That's why I'm like, it's even easier.
like you don't have to get into that much detail.
We kind of had this, we've talked about this a lot. It's like, it's so crazy how far we've come with how much technology is out there that actually sometimes, depending on how big you are, I think the smaller you are, the more confusing it makes you. I think as you get bigger and you can afford to hire these people who can create these models that really, really work, I think a lot of these brands, I would probably say, and you guys might disagree with me, like anybody probably under the $25 million mark and under, like you can get away with having less.
oh, 100%.
And you could maybe even make an argument around 50 million and under, right? And it just depends on how complicated the business is. But yeah, we're almost overcomplicating so much stuff that it's like, hey, we have all this stuff to do it, but it's like, what is it telling me? Versus on the 10th, I increased my meta budget 55%. How much traffic did I see grow? How much revenue did I see grow?
Yeah.
How many more products did we sell? Did we at all?
Yep.
You know? And you can kind of just start to just measure from there. Like, okay, we saw a lift that was sustainable.
Yep.
Our acquisition costs only increased 10%.
Yep.
Therefore, this was a good move.
Well, one of the things that anyone can do, whether you're a 25 million, 50 or 100, doesn't matter, whatever. And we actually rely on MMTs, which is, you know, match market tests, where you take a market that you take two markets that are very, very similar.
Okay.
And you
Now, when you say market, are you saying geographic region of a market or a demographic?
like a geographic region that are very similar.
Yep.
So like Nashville and
In like Orlando,
okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
You take those and you say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this type of marketing here, and I'm going to hold everything else constant. You don't need someone an agency or whoever to tell you how to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've done that. That's, to me,
another name for that's called a holdout test.
holdout. Sure.
Yeah.
And
For people just
yes,
on the digital side, because he's
Yes.
talking geographic regions, which would be the MMTs.
Yeah.
yeah. So we rely on those MMTs or holdouts to really give us, because MMM will give you directional, you know, your multi-touch attribution will give you directional, but you know, match market test will go, oh my gosh, when we did that in Orlando, that made a difference. Look what traffic was in Orlando versus Nashville, and those were acting the exact same the previous 90 days.
Yeah.
And
Can I add something to what
Please,
you're saying?
please.
Is what he's referring to right now for the listeners is directional would be like channels, right? So multi-attribution models help you understand the channels. He's saying with the holdout test, this is basically a creative test to understand what substance of advertising and messaging is working in those markets, right?
Yeah. Yes. And so we just did a test with Meta. And we said, hey, we're weak in this part of the country. And that part of the country is so similar to this part of the country. We're going to pump up our spend. And it wasn't crazy, but pump up our spend in Meta in this part of the country for 6 weeks to see how, if we can get these markets to act similar.
Yeah.
And we saw some incredible results. We go, whoa, okay. So Meta clearly is going to help us in this region. Let's continue to do that. What if we layer on something on top of that? What if we layered on another channel? And then, but you can also do creative, like you said, like it could be a creative test, 100%.
But here's my question. Are you separating, because a lot of people say broad on Meta, right?
Yeah.
So get into that a little bit if you think if it's worth it for smaller brands to try geographic regions, because Meta will bias itself to whatever your customer base currently is. So if your customer base is 80% California, Meta will spend 80% in California always, unless you nudge it, right?
Yes.
Typically. Or unless your messaging changes so much that it's not resonating in California.
Yep.
So what he's saying is he's run into problems where, like, okay, like the messaging has changed, but we're still targeting California. So like, how do we actually grow this geographic region or this demographic of people, right?
Yeah.
So you go into this region, you do the holdout test, the MMT versus whatever. You find success with Meta, so you're doing a geographic based target.
Yes.
You're raising budgets, and then you say, okay, now let's layer on a new channel.
Yes.
Now, did the message change in that holdout test?
No, because you got to keep those consistent. Otherwise it turns into a creative test and you're adding new variables. So you try to keep what you want.
So all you were doing was saying, we just need to get the spend up budget, in this area.
More impressions. Okay. What do more impressions mean? Because again, that's where it's really hard. And you got to use your gut a little bit.
Yeah.
And you got to say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to totally measure all this, but will these impressions make a difference?
Sure.
So I have a close friend, worked in Meta forever, and he'll argue, listen, Meta has been doing this forever. Trust them. Just trust their algorithm to go do their job.
Yep.
And I do think that there is truth to that.
Which 90% of the time works every time.
But in the scenario you just said, Mark, right? It was, gosh, well, we've been growing in California. Can we grow outside of California?
Yeah.
Because Meta just keeps saying California is great.
Yeah.
So
what happens, just for our listeners to get into the meat and potatoes here, is you'll start seeing certain top line metrics or your lead indicators, your KPIs, like frequency, will start going up in that region because the algorithm gets stuck in the mud a little.
Yeah.
And that's how you can measure, hey, for example, an easy one is go look at your audience segments and go look how much your frequency has risen over the last 3 months with your existing customers.
Yeah.
Like you'll notice all of a sudden, oh, if you're not excluding those existing customers, like you're retargeting them 20 times a week. Like you're not getting incremental growth out of that. That is wasted spend. And I'll fight anyone on it because we've already run these tests.
Yes.
So what he's saying is like, hey, okay, we know that we grew in California, but now our frequencies are going up. They're looking at these top line KPIs. Their CPMs might be rising. Frequencies are going up. So their cost per 1,000 reach has really gone up. So like, and that's the other thing, right? Because people look at CPMs, like you said, impressions.
Yeah.
Which is a good indicator, but sometimes you have a really low CPM because the Facebook algorithm is giving you an advantage to retarget people that aren't really going to buy. So it's the cost per reach goes up, but a lot of people don't look at cost per 1,000 reached. So are those the measures that you're looking at? And then you're saying, okay, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
We need to now look at expanding and pushing the algorithm in a way we want it to.
Yeah. I won't even, because you just nailed it. That's so many things. You just kind of described a little bit of our journey, well, a lot of our journey at Gabb. I'll add one more little nuance. We were 2 years ago when I joined, we were so heavily reliant on Meta. We weren't even doing much in search. Yeah. And there was a lot of search demand to go grab. And we saw CPMs rising in Meta. So we went and we just looked at every state, big DMAs in the US. And we just categorized them into, negative ROAS. We're not getting return in this region right now.
Yep.
And then positive ROAS and doing really, really well. And then ROAS that's break even. Okay.
Yep.
There might be something here. And we just turned down spend where we were not doing well, and said, we're just going to take that spend. I didn't go ask for more money. We just said, same amount of money. We're just going to take that spend and we're going to pump up these two areas that are really, really, like, this one shows promise. We're at least, even on ROAS. Yep. And this one shows, some positive growth. And that has changed our marketing maybe more than anything we've done, because now we're taking that approach throughout the United States. Because again, our biggest problem at Gabb is awareness. Do you know that there is a safe tech alternative?
Yeah.
When your kid is saying, I want a phone, and they're 9 or 10, how do you get the mom to say, not just to go into Verizon and add a line?
Right. Yeah.
So we've seen DMAs, Chicago, Dallas, LA, Atlanta, just start to take off. And now we were just looking at data 2 days ago. The Russ Belt is starting to really take off. Now we still have some regions that are not that great.
Yeah.
So we're letting those lie while we grow these other regions, because there's plenty of TAM, total addressable market to go out and get. But yeah, I would layer that onto what you said, Mark, and that's kind of been our journey with layering on a lot of brand media.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot more TV, because I learned that from Ancestry.
Yeah.
What made the biggest difference for Ancestry back in the day when measurement wasn't all up in your face was they built a brand. That's why they punch above their weight.
Right.
They built a brand, and I know that Gabb needs to build their brand.
Yeah.
And so we've done linear TV with an agency. We've done streaming, YouTube quite a bit, and podcasting. And
can I ask you about what
please.
your percentage of spend is in traditional media versus digital or new age? And when you say new age, we've defined new age as podcasts, right? Digital marketing, YouTube. And I know digital marketing kind of covers a lot of that, but new age is essentially all the new mediums that people are watching and on. Where traditional, I even include I include Netflix in traditional. So like linear.
Okay.
I would say that's traditional advertising because it's still TV based. It's interrupting a show or whatever it might be.
It fluctuates. And one of the things that we're trying to get better at is having a constant brand drum. Again, it's sales overnight, brand over time.
Yep.
So how do you have a consistent beat that isn't fluctuating with, oh my gosh, I have more money this month because it's a bigger month with back to school, because that's a big time for us.
Sure.
We have more money to go spend, so let's go spend. No, in those other months, we've got to stay consistent with our brand spend.
Sure.
It's traditional versus new age, as you put it. It's probably 30 traditional, maybe 35.
Can I ask you a politics question now?
Okay. Wow. We're taking yes. Let's go. Please.
We discuss politics because we're not discussing politics, but the marketing strategies of each presidential campaign, where the Harris camp has been very traditional. The Trump camp has been very new age. So,
which is interesting because Obama was more new age. He was very like grassroots, and very digital.
Yeah, that's very
I can't
true.
remember. Because that was 2008 when he was first elected. So was that Twitter? Was Twitter around in 2008?
Yeah.
I literally don't know.
I think so.
Yep.
Was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the question I have is like, if you were going to critique these campaigns, what would you say? Would you say you should be leaning into new age or you should be leaning into traditional?
Yes. The answer is it depends on where you're at as a brand.
Yeah.
But the more you ignore big mass media, people say TV is dead. It's not. It has made a huge difference. Our traffic is up double year on year. Do you know why? It's TV. TV has made all of the difference. And you would go, come on, people are cutting cords.
Right,
Just come on, nobody. No. And TV's gotten better and easier to buy. You can buy TV in no matter what size of company you are. It was so hard to buy TV before.
Yeah.
It's so easy to buy TV now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying go out and blow your budget on TV, but you've got to start using those big swings. I'll tell you one example. So when we were first starting on TV, our agency came to us and said, hey, it was game 5 of the World Series, game 6. I'm not a baseball guy. I love baseball, but I don't remember. It was the last game, and they said, "Hey, we got a fire sale."
Is this last year?
Last year.
Is this who was in
Arizona and
Padres?
Was it the Phillies?
Wait, when did the Padres?
I don't
Have the Padres ever gone to
See,
the World Series?
Or were they just before? They might have got eliminated just before.
I don't know.
Was it
I don't
Texas,
watch it
Arizona?
enough.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
So our agency came to us and said, "We got one spot in game 5 or 6, whatever." It was November 1. It was right to kick off holiday for us.
Yeah.
Do you want it? And I said, "How much?" They said, they gave me the amount. It was $32,000 for a spot, and I was like, "Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it."
I'm imagining you already mentioned this. You said Dallas was one of your growing areas, and so
Yes.
was
That
it the
one of the
Rangers?
reasons why.
Yes, yeah. So you had
And then
Texas
I'm
and
sure
Arizona.
Phoenix is a growing area
Yes,
for you.
and I said, okay, yes, we looked at the teams,
Yeah.
which is why I remember the teams.
Yep.
And we said, let's go for it. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's no MMM here, no, like let's just. And our site went down. We took down Gabb. Now, bummer that we took down Gabb, but we had so much traffic within 5 minutes after that spot aired, and everybody had their phone blowing up. Oh my gosh, I just saw you in the World Series. What? There's something, yes, traffic, measurable, great, but there's something intangible about when somebody sees your product. And I don't want to be this whole thing about TV. I don't want to over-index here.
No.
But you see a product on TV, you go, oh, they're for real.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, they're for real. This isn't like something you scroll past on Meta.
Sure.
Yeah, I've seen them on Meta, but that's a solid story they're telling.
It's almost like we talk about social proof as someone else having to give the brand that, right? A testimonial is social proof, a rating is social proof, UGC is social proof. You know, influencers even can be social proof.
Yeah.
But there's something about seeing TV and being like, they must be something legit, right? It's almost like it's almost like paid social proof you can just like manufacture.
Like an influencer.
Yeah, but it's almost kind of like what followers were back in 2018, right? I jump on, you have 100,000 followers, like, whoa, 1 million followers. These guys must be legit. I'm buying from them.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
No. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, brand legitimacy.
Yeah. Now you can over-index, and I think that
So that's my question. Do you think these camps, if you were going to be an outside consultant, would you say, "Hey Harris, you're over-indexed into this mainstream traditional channel," or would you say that? What would you say to Trump's team? Would you say you guys are way over-indexed into social?
Well, again, I think there are probably some smart people on both sides doing some good things, but I think
I don't know.
To me,
Being generous there.
I think that I know I'm hedging here, but I would say I feel very comfortable in a 70-30 mix where 70% is in what you call new age, this very digital world, and 30% is pretty mass. But you got to make sure that your creative is telling a positive brand story across those, because they do connect in people's minds. It's not linear in a story, a through line, but they're going to associate you with those spots. So to me, I would lean more on the new age side for sure, but to forget about traditional, I think is a miss.
Yeah, because I don't think either of them. I mean, the Harris campaign just came out and did a podcast with Call Her Daddy. Is that
More new age? Yep.
so? That's her first, I think, like new age appearance.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we said it's
she
interesting because Trump's team is dominating search traffic. That's not. He also, I believe, was dominating search traffic during the Biden, the Biden campaign in 2020.
I don't remember.
But nonetheless, like the interest is up. Like you get a lot of search, and then we're like, well, it also could be demographic, right? Because they also know who their core demographics are.
Yeah.
And so maybe Kamala has
Or
to
who
relate
they
to the
want
older
or need,
demographic,
yeah.
so she's leaning traditional, and maybe Trump's trying to get a younger
Totally.
demographic, so he's leaning new age.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that could also be part of this mix that we're not necessarily
Yes.
seeing,
Sure.
Yeah.
because there's core strategies with politics which are a little different than businesses. Like
'Cause
they
it's
kind of
more a
forget about their
short-come out-
core.
It is, and it's a short-term outcome. It's on
Yes.
November,
Right. Yeah,
versus
for
building
sure.
a brand over time.
But it is interesting just to think from a brand perspective, like, oh, you got to know who your core audience is, right? They're both trying not to alienate their core audience, their core customer, and they're both trying to get people to come in.
Yeah.
And that's similar to what you did, right? Like I have a geographic region. I already know who my core is. Hey, I need this geographic region to go up. Like, how do I relate to that one geographic region? Maybe it's just simply getting more spend there.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need to change a message for that region.
How are you? One question I'm curious about is because I love this discussion around brand, right? Because so many people are so interested in when I spend $1, how do I make that dollar back plus X amount more? And oftentimes when you introduce a branding strategy, you have to start to be more patient with when that dollar is going to come back into your pocket. And it could be 3 months and it could be 2 years, depending on.
Or never.
Or never. Yeah, very much so. So what are you doing to make sure that you're, so let's just take one of these. You've given us a lot of really good examples, which is like, okay, cool. We noticed that the Dallas market is doing really, really well. So we want to up our spend over there.
Right.
When you up your meta spend over there, is that when you go to your traditional team, do you also start to say, okay, we saw the positive lift over there. Now let's start getting more brand over there. How are you making the decision where to put the brand?
Yeah. So, in where we can control it, like for YouTube or streaming, it's easier to say, let's give a little more juice in Dallas.
Yep.
In linear, it's more national.
Sure.
I mentioned that we're starting to see some really good movement in the Rust Belt. And that's because the TV that we've been targeting, I think a lot of people in the Rust Belt, it like hits them. Like it's the TV that I think that they resonate with most. And we've been running TV for a year. So I think that that's having an impact. But you asked like how you dollar in, how much a dollar out, $2 in, like you got to measure this.
Yeah.
The way we measure it right now, because we really do got to be cost conscious. We don't have the budget of Ancestry.
Sure.
It's about traffic.
Yeah.
So we measure our brand spend against traffic.
Cool.
And people searching for Gabb on Google,
Yep.
which are easy ways for us to say, as spend is going up in brand, what is traffic doing to our site?
Yes.
And what are searches, what's the trend with people searching for Gabb?
Yep.
That's tangible. You can hold it. And then, retargeting those folks, you can start to see are they as we retarget them on Meta, how are they working out?
Yep.
Is it successful? Is it not? So that's a way to maybe tiptoe into brand.
Yep.
That's more tangible, because where marketers get themselves into trouble is the CFO or the CEO isn't necessarily a marketer.
Yep.
And so they'll say, whoa, what are you doing with our money?
Yeah.
And you have to be able to justify it.
Yeah.
So even going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, Mark, it was, hey, the beginning of my career, I didn't have a lot of measurement. Now I do. I've got to be able to talk to finance with a finance lens. I got to be able to speak their language.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's always going to be an argument.
Yeah.
You can't have that money.
Sure.
You're not doing anything. Why don't you just cut that over there?
Yeah.
Well, no, because that's doing good. How? How is it doing good? You have to be able to give a story.
Yeah.
So right now at Gabb, that's one of the primary ways is that we are saying, let's look at traffic, let's look at search, let's use an MMM to help us directionally understand what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trevor,
Yeah,
got your answer.
and depending on how advanced your MMM is, a bigger company will be able to determine that top line traffic coming in. So if you have new users, there's predictive models where you can say, hey, based off of bounce rates and average time on site, like you can justify the spend, because in the past, like we can't say we got the money back now, but if you're talking to finance, you can say, hey, we dedicated 15% of budget to this. This is the traffic. this is how interested they are. We can say that we should see this kind of projection out from like 3 months from now. If we don't, then we know it was a failure.
Yep.
So you don't have to hide the fact that it might be a failure.
Yeah.
But you have to tell the story of, well, this is why this is the logic behind it. We're not just throwing money. And we actually just had that conversation with a client of ours
I was going to bring up this example.
It's like, hey, this isn't a home run yet. We just started this test a week ago, but like you're still projected to do better profits than you did in the last 5 months.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge win. It's not a huge loss. We're going to have to go a week and kind of measure this out.
Well, the other thing to talk about storytelling is like there's been clients and people we've worked with too who've had really, really strong abilities to retain customers, right? They have products that just promote buying over and over and over and over again. And you know, when you build something, you know, a lifetime value analysis over 12 months or 2 years or whatever it might be, you can see that this brand is wildly profitable just within 12 months. And so there's been times where we've gone to people to say, hey, obviously it's our goal to, it should be your goal to acquire customers at a net positive if you can. But we know that if you stop spending money on acquisition and trying to build your brand that will acquire customers, what is going to eventually happen is you're going to start losing more customers than you're bringing in. And you have to be able to fill that bucket because everyone, it doesn't matter how great you are at it.
And this conversation always happens September, October.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Because I don't know about Gabb, but in the e-commerce world, your best returning cohorts are August, September, October. Like those cohorts come back and pay you back twofold in November. But people want to cut spend because their acquisition costs start going up. Like as you're nearing November and you're like, I mean, yeah, you can cut spend, but then you're just going to miss out on this new cohort that comes back at 20, 40, 50%.
Well, I know you guys do good during back to school, but don't you guys crush during Black Friday?
100%.
Yeah.
So you guys are probably seeing the same thing, right?
We went to buy this Black Friday and the site was down. Yeah, I think, if I recall.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody watching, I'm so sorry. We're getting better. We are, that's,
but they
for those listening,
they
it's
offer a crazy deal.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned at Ancestry, you know, Ancestry's, you know, when I was there early on, they went public, then they went private, then they got bought again, and they got bought again. And so they're meticulous. Their finance team over there is tops.
Yeah.
They're meticulous on where dollars are spent. That's why I think, you know, especially in this area, there's so many former Ancestry people are all over because we cut our teeth.
Yeah.
You know, learning that way. You know, Karen Peterson at Chatbooks is one of my good friends. Like we all cut our teeth that way.
Yeah.
So to get to your question, I know that this can maybe make people feel a little heartburn, but we categorize our media in two different places. One is this dollar meant to acquire a customer, or is this dollar meant to introduce someone to our brand? Two different jobs to be done.
Cool.
And we measure our CAC, our consumer, you know, our cost to acquire that customer based on our dollar that's going out to acquire the customer.
Yep.
And our brand spend, people, you know, introducing our brand to people, better keep that dollar figure low.
Yeah.
So you can performance media yourself into the ground where
100%.
you are just search. I'm just capturing all the demand for everybody who's searching for me. It's good, but your costs, you just said it, the costs are going to start going up. And then eventually you're going to be like, it's too expensive to acquire a customer. That's why you have to start layering on some of these brand market, you know, brand channels, and measure it in an appropriate way.
Totally.
And the biggest overall measurement, you can go to your CEO or your CFO and say, look at our performance media, where it's $1 to acquire a customer. For us, it's gone down. Competition has gone up for Gabb. There's you know, custom media has gone up, but our costs in performance media is down year on year. Why? Because we're spending more in brand. And so our overall total media CAC is actually going up, but our performance media CAC is going down because we're bringing more and more people into the funnel. And the dollars that are introducing people to Gabb
more and more new eyeballs.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when you're starting out, you just want to go capture demand. That totally makes sense. but you're going to start to see costs rise.
Yep.
And when you start doing that, you have to start thinking, how am I going to build my brand story?
Yeah.
What channels can I start to use to build a brand story? And start to layer it on, because that's going to help you bring those costs somewhat in line to where the market is.
Totally. That's good.
Yeah, that's
really
great.
Good. What advice do you have? Because what's been cool is I think you've done a pretty good job at this, but I think we can get a little more specific. Gabb, I know your budget's not as big as Ancestry, but it's bigger than a lot of people that are probably listening to this podcast right now. Okay. And I'd probably say even more, the majority of the people listening to this podcast. What are your recommendations for the brand who's in that like under $5 million range to start working on building that brand story? Like what are those quick wins or safer, tests that these people can be running and doing?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I think this is interesting too, because you've worked for companies that have sensitive topics, right? With Gabb, when you're talking about child safe tech, you also have to talk about pornography, predators. There's a very dark side to that message. With Ancestry, when you guys got into the bio field, like there's a lot of flack that you can get for that. There's a lot of opposition that people would probably come out and attack you guys for. So I think this is just an interesting question for you, not to hijack, but you've had to deal with sensitive subjects. So how do you build a brand and tell a story that you can build upon for if you're just starting out?
Yeah. So 2 questions. The 5 million or less. I would say that go into channels that are measurable. I've talked a lot about TV.
Yep.
If you're $5 million, I don't necessarily think that TV is the next place.
Yep.
Somewhere like layering on a top of funnel, more traffic campaign on Meta would be a good place to start, and just see what happens. Right. Go into YouTube and target the same type of people that are coming to your site on YouTube. Just see what happens. Don't throw thousands of dollars, throw hundreds of dollars and see what happens.
Cool.
I could go into much more depth, but I think that's a good place to start, and then see what happens with traffic. I'd say what happens.
Watch traffic.
Watch your search. Are people searching for your terms more?
Yep.
And then again, I'd be very measured to say, I'm going to do this in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So that you aren't going national, and you can say what's happening in Atlanta.
Sure.
And you can be even more precise, and you can feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
But be brave.
Yeah.
Be brave. Don't be scared. Be brave. Go.
Yeah.
Do it. As far as sensitive topics,
were you saying brave for Atlanta because the Atlanta Braves?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that pun intended?
That's exactly what I was saying.
One thing I want to add.
Braves.
One thing I want to add
Go
to
Braves.
that. To that one thing, we've had this guy. We keep quoting this, but do you know who Alex MacArthur is?
Yeah.
He
doesn't
came on
know
the
me, but I
podcast.
know him.
He came on the podcast, and his belief system is very similar to your belief system, right? The things that you've described, and what he says is his famous quote that we've quoted probably 15 times since he's been on is "Sales follow search."
Yeah.
Right, and that's why Russ is saying, look at search, look at traffic, because that is going to be the next best indicator that somebody's going to buy. That's why in media buying, people are going to look at the link click-through rate and not just the click-through rate, because link click-through rate is going to be one step closer to understanding if that person's interested in purchasing versus just clicking.
That's right.
So sorry. Yep. Go ahead. You can answer his question now, but I wanted to kind of like
connect the pieces.
That. Yep.
Yeah. Connect those pieces. Well, and like I said, like again, the shout out to Mike Linton, who CMO at Farmers, eBay, Best Buy, and he was my manager at Ancestry, and I still talk to him today. And he has a cool podcast too. Again, I've quoted him several times, which is it's sales overnight, brand over time.
Yep.
Sales overnight, brand over time. Don't sacrifice.
Yeah.
So sensitive topics.
Because a lot of brands, when they're starting out, they're afraid. They might not have a sensitive topic about their brand, but they're afraid of rubbing shoulders with the wrong audience or saying something that might be inflammatory about a competitor.
Drawing a line in the sand.
So they almost just kind of sit there in this kind of tepid marketing approach that's not very intriguing.
So I'm talking to myself.
Basically, because like you said, they're scared. Like, be brave.
Yep.
I think you have to be brave when you're starting out. So how would you guide someone to do that?
Just as much as I'm talking to anybody listening.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think more people look at our marketing than are looking at our marketing.
Totally.
So we're afraid to like make a mistake. You can make a mistake. There's two kinds of mistakes. There's a mistake like, oh my gosh, I talked to my competitor this way, or I, you know, whatever. It was, I don't know if I should have done that.
Yeah.
Versus, oh my gosh, I hit a huge hot button.
Yeah.
In politics or whatever.
Sure.
That could, you know, hurt me. If you're a smaller brand, both of those are the risk is pretty small. If you're a bigger brand, that second one is really, really important to ask yourself, what's core to our brand? What's our brand promise? And is this a story that delivers on a brand promise? So at Ancestry, we had records that talked about, you know, women's, you know, ability to vote. That could be considered a hot button topic, or a lot of content around slavery.
Yep.
We were really, really thoughtful because we knew what our brand stood for around talking about those things, not shying away, talking about those things in the right way.
Yeah.
And we made some mistakes. One in particular we probably don't have time to talk about, but we ran a commercial in Canada, thought we'd run it in the US, and it backfired. After that, we learned from it, and we said, we got to get a group of people who are from all around the world here to just, again, this is more for a bigger brand, but let's have them look at our content.
Yeah.
We're getting to that place where we got to be really thoughtful with what we're talking about.
Sure.
At Gabb, part of our core is that social media is hurting our kids.
Yeah.
It is crushing our kids. And so you'll see in our TV advertising,
which a lot of people don't want to hear.
They don't.
No. And they actually advocate for the opposite.
I know.
No, 100%. they need the connection.
Yes.
Yes.
And they'll feel left out if they don't.
If they're not a part of it, they'll feel left out and they'll be bullied.
And so we've said, no, a part of our brand promise is that this is the data. The data says that more kids are depressed, more kids are anxious, more kids are bullied, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And social media is a big part of that. So we've taken a stand. We said, so we have a campaign right now on TV called One Childhood. A kid gets one childhood. So we have kids talking about what social media is doing for them. We talk about it in a funny way, like kids, you know, saying, "I'm ready for this thing. I'm ready to drive, Mom." Like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this app. No, not yet. Like, you're doing great, but not yet.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it in light ways and some heavy ways.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, for us, it's part of our brand promise. It's core to who we are. We will take a stand against what social media is doing to kids. And it might alienate some people, but they're not our target audience.
That's a good answer.
Makes sense.
If it's for your target audience, then
Totally.
you can't shy away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the message, right? It's like if it's gonna be for your TAM, then go for it.
Yeah.
And also, Gabb is talking about competitor, because a lot of this really has to do with like, oh, I don't want to call out a competitor. Well, Gabb is fighting the biggest company in the world, right? They're fighting the Microsofts and the Apples. So, and they have to call, and you guys have to call them out directly. And you can't shy away from it, but that's done nothing but help you.
Yeah.
By calling it out. Like, you're not saying that everything about Apple is horrible.
No, not at all. And not everything about social media is horrible. There's a time and place.
But you have to, like you said, you have to define, I liked what you said, define like what your core principles and promises are to your audience.
Yeah. And again, I learned that through good ways and the hard ways at Ancestry. Yeah. We're still at the beginning of Gabb. We still have so much more to go. And I'm learning so much. I know we're wrapping up, but one thought I would leave with too, and I maybe said it to begin with, when you're building a team and you're just starting out, you've got to hire the right people who are proactive, who care about building relationships, who are sincere. I care honestly less about what you know about marketing and who you are than who you are.
Yeah.
And because I and the internet and everybody else can teach you how to do search marketing.
Totally. Yeah.
But I can't teach you how to build a relationship with product.
Yeah.
I can't teach you how to build a relationship and understand how to talk to finance.
Yeah.
I can't teach you to not, the way to get ahead isn't to take all the credit, but to give the credit to somebody else.
Yeah.
So at Gabb, we have an amazing team that does that. And I think the success that we're seeing at Gabb, 60% growth in ARR in the last 2 years, is because of that team that like would run through a wall for each other.
For sure. There's something about a mission as strong as Gabb's that you're gonna get talent that an Apple might not get because their mission is so different. Not that Apple doesn't have probably a good mission, but your mission is there's so much good to it, right? And so you mix like, you know, like having the right team with the right message, and there's a lot of really good that can come from that. So I think that's a really cool way to end the podcast, and I appreciate that. Well, Russ, thank you so much, dude. This has been awesome. Like super, super tangible. Where can I know you say you don't get out much, right? I can't remember if you were saying that. Were you saying that while we were recording, or
no?
When we were not.
I'm not on. I need to be better. I've honestly been taught by some of the best of the best.
This is your coming out party here. All right, this is your coming out party.
And I just gotta. I'm more comfortable sitting with my team and grinding and helping save kids.
Yeah.
But I want to help others who are coming up.
Yeah.
And I want to be better that way. So thanks for the opportunity, both.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, you can find Gabb, is gabbwireless.com?
It's gabb.com.
Gabb.com.
We've dropped wireless. We've simplified our brand. So it's gabb.com.
Beautiful.
So much better.
And you can find Russ Hannig on LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn. I'm not super.
You got some good posts. I've seen it, you know.
Thanks.
I'm gonna send you a bunch of content.
Okay.
And you're gonna be able to post it on LinkedIn for yourself.
And
I'll just highlight the reels of just you. You're gonna have a bright red face as you click post.
I will have a bright red face.
This has been awesome. Thank you so
both
much, man.
So much.
Well, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. Please go rate and subscribe the podcast, whether it's good or bad. We want to hear from you because we always want to make this podcast better. If you want to get in touch with me or give me any direct feedback, please go follow me and get in touch with me. I am at the Trevor Crump on both Instagram and TikTok. Thank you, and we will see you next week.